Hello, and welcome to our webinar to discuss our new approach to continuing competence. Thank you for joining us. I'm Richard Williams. I'm a Policy Associate at the SRA, and I'm joined by Mary Costello, an Education Researcher. Before we get into the webinar, there are a few practical issues we just need to explain. Firstly, if at any stage during the duration of the webinar you encounter any technical difficulties, there is a button on the right-hand side of your screen which you can click to access technical support. Secondly, we're planning on asking 4 very quick and simple questions throughout the webinar. We'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to answer those, as it will help with our planning and development. The third point is that feel free to ask any questions through the question box during the webinar. We've dedicated time at the end to address these and answer these, so please feel free to do that at any stage. And the final point is that in terms of the end of the webinar, please make sure that you complete our exit survey because we're always looking to improve the experience of these webinars. So the purpose of today's webinar is really to provide further information and clarity on our new approach to ensuring the ongoing competence of solicitors. We hope at the end of this webinar you'll understand why we are making the changes, when we will make them, how these changes will affect you, how you can ensure you can continue to meet your regulatory requirements, and how we will support you in adopting our new approach to continuing competence. We need to really start with our regulatory purpose. We need to put the role of ongoing competence of solicitors into our regulatory framework. And to do this, we need to look at our purpose of the SRA. And that purpose is to protect the consumers of legal services, to support the operation of the rule of law and the proper administration of justice. And in delivering those objectives, we look to ensure that our regulation is targeted, proportionate, and does not place any unnecessary financial or time cost burdens on those that we regulate. So within that context, ensuring that solicitors remain competent to deliver a proper standard of service is vital for us.
Okay, we're going to look at our first question, and that is, had you heard about our new approach to continuing competence before this webinar? So if you could look at that and answer that for us, that'd be great. The position statement went out yesterday, and so far as we know, 1,500 people have looked at it. And also, I don't know whether anyone here has had a look at an interview we've got with Judy Brannan, the Education Training Director of the unit. So that might be something to help look at later. Okay, so you've had a little bit of time to look there, so we'll look at the results now. Okay, so that's very good. That over 90% of you have seen the new approach so far. That's great, thank you.
So in terms of understanding our new approach to ensuring ongoing competence of solicitors, it's probably a good idea just to quickly reflect back on why we thought changes to our existing requirements were necessary. We signalled our intention to look at the effectiveness of our current CPD requirements in our policy statement, Training for Tomorrow, which we issued in autumn 2013. In that statement, we said that we really wanted just to make sure that the current arrangements were fit for purpose. And in fulfilling that commitment, our policy work identified 4, fundamental issues with that approach. Firstly, the 16-hour requirement does not guarantee competence. It is an arbitrary figure. Some people do more, some people do less, but one thing it doesn't do is guarantee that solicitors are competent to deliver a proper standard of service. We also felt that the 16-hour requirement was really driving the wrong sort of learning and development behaviour. There was a focus on complying with the need to assimilate 16 hours of CPD, as opposed to really reflecting on and thinking about the learning and development you require to deliver a proper standard of service. So the focus was very much on regulatory compliance rather than competence. The approach was also a blanket approach. It was a blanket approach in terms of it covers all solicitors, irrespective of their experience and their role, but it was also a blanket approach in terms of that it didn't really take into account the wide range of learning styles that individual solicitors have. And the fourth reason really relates to, I suppose, kind of advances in technology and in the way in which we consume learning and can access learning. So for all of those reasons, we felt that change was necessary. In May, our board approved a new approach after full consideration of the consultation responses. The next few slides really talk through the key principles of what our new approach looks like. So one of the key elements of our new approach is that we will expect that individual solicitors will continue to comply with Principle 5 of the SRA's Code of Conduct, and that requires them to deliver a proper standard of service. In terms of taking our new approach forward, we will be amending the guidance note to Principle 5 in our handbook so that when individual solicitors are meeting this regulatory compliance, they also comply with our competence statement, and Mary will come on to talk about our competence statement shortly. We expect as part of our new approach that solicitors will regularly reflect on the quality of their practice. They can do this by reference to our proposed competence statement, and the proposed competence statement defines what effective performance looks like. As part of that reflective process, we expect solicitors will also identify training needs and address those training needs. A key advantage of our new approach is that solicitors will have the freedom and flexibility to address identified training needs in a way in which they deem appropriate. We take the requirement to ensure ongoing competence very seriously for the reasons we've explained earlier. So to reinforce that, we'll be requiring under our new approach all solicitors to make an annual declaration that training needs have been considered and measures taken to maintain competence. We'll be issuing further information on this annual declaration when we release our toolkit and competence statement in spring 2015. Our new approach will remove the current requirement from the 1st of November 2016 to undertake 16 hours CPD. And from the 1st of November this year, 2014, there will be no requirement to undertake accredited training. So that's our new approach. We think the new approach has a number of benefits for solicitors and their employers. So the first benefit really is that solicitors now have the freedom and flexibility to determine the learning they believe is required to deliver a proper standard of service. The second benefit is the introduction of the competence statement means that solicitors will have a clear understanding of what it is required to deliver a proper standard of service. We think the new approach will also reduce the regulatory burden on individual solicitors and on firms. Rather than being a blanket approach that all solicitors need to take and need to do 16 hours, our new approach means that learning and development can be tailored and focused to specific learning and development needs. In terms of providers of learning and development, the removal of accredited training means that there is flexibility and freedom for them to be innovative in how they design and deliver training.
So we'll look now at the competence statement. The first draft of this that will go public will be out next week, so you'll be able to have a look at that. We have developed that as a way to set out a framework, show what it needs, what a solicitor needs to have to be a practitioner who is safe and effective. It will ensure the standards for solicitors, and it will be something that can be used at the point of qualification and for solicitors to use throughout their careers as something to reflect on and look at where they are performing and how they're performing. So it is intended to capture all the activities that an effective solicitor undertakes. So it's looking at what a solicitor actually does with day in, day out, and the key competencies there. This competence statement has been developed through a wide range of activities and engagement with solicitors, consumers and legal educators. We've undertaken a lot of work over the past 12 months to develop that, and it's been an iterative process. So you'll be able to see that again as well in the consultation, looking at how we've got there. And one of the key things that we've been looking at when developing it is how this can be used as a tool for entrance, but also for when you're going through your what you need to be doing to remain competent, keep competence, and to take appropriate measures to maintain that competence throughout a career. We've also defined a threshold standard. That's the minimum standard of competence that will be required of a new entrant to the profession at the point of qualification. So we've developed and tested that, again, through a number of methods and through talking with a wide range of members of the profession at different stages of the career. And this consultation will launch next week, so there'll be an awful lot of documentation for you to read and to help you understand what the competence statement is, what it's trying to do, and we'll very much welcome your views there.
In terms of the timetable for implementation of the new approach, this slide defines the key milestones. So as previously mentioned, on the 1st of November this year, at the start of the 2014 practicing year, there'll be no requirement to undertake accredited training. In spring 2015, we will publish the competence statement that Mary's referred to. We'll also publish our toolkit, which we'll come on to shortly. From the 1st of April 2015, solicitors can choose to adopt our new approach to ensuring ongoing competence and the delivery of a proper standard of service. And then, from the 1st of November 2016, our new approach becomes universal for all regulated individuals, and everyone will need to move to the new approach. So what does this mean in practical terms for you, for the 2014-15 practicing year, and also for the 2015-16 practicing year? So essentially, up until the 31st of October 2016, solicitors can choose to either ensure that they maintain their competence to deliver a proper standard of service by following the existing CPD requirements, or from the 1st of April 2015, they can choose to adopt the new approach. So what we'll do now is just sort of talk through each of those options. In terms of following existing requirements, this is very much sort of the status quo position. If you decide that this is the approach which is suitable for you to ensure your ongoing competence, to deliver a proper standard of service, then you can continue to undertake 16 hours of CPD per practicing year. We will still require you to make a declaration in the way that you do now that you've met CPD requirements for the practicing years 14-15 and 15-16. However, there is now, from the 1st of November 2014, no requirement to undertake any accredited training. So, if you are thinking about moving to the new approach, the next few slides sort of describe what we expect from you in doing so. So, solicitors can move to the new approach any time from the 1st of April 2015. So in doing so, we expect you to continue to meet the current regulatory requirement to deliver a proper standard of service. We also expect you to regularly reflect on the quality of your practice. We'll expect you to identify any training needs, and we'll expect you to address those training needs. you can have flexibility and freedom in how you identify your training needs and also how you address them, but we'd expect you to go through that process. And as I mentioned before, with the competence statement defining what effective performance looks like, we'd expect you to be meeting the contents of that competence statement on a regular basis. In terms of the actual transition to the new approach, we don't expect you to go through a sort of complicated mathematical process of prorating number of hours before you move in to the new approach. So we don't expect you to prorate any of the 16 hours before you adopt the new approach. As with following the existing requirements, there is from the 1st of November 2014, there is no requirement to undertake any accredited training. A key strand of our new approach is really around our expectation of how you should demonstrate that you've undertaken a process to identify and address your training needs. This will be a key part of our new approach. It's our expectation that you'll be able to demonstrate to us where appropriate and if required that you've gone through that particular process and taken steps to ensure that you're competent. We will expect, if you move to the new approach, we'll expect you to make an annual declaration. Now, the type of annual declaration you will be required to make really does depend on the point at which you choose to adopt the new approach. So if you choose to move to the new approach before the 31st of October 2015, we will require you to make an annual declaration that consideration has been given to learning and development needs and steps taken to ensure you maintain your competence for the 14-15 and 15-16 practicing years. If you move to the new approach after the 31st of October 2015, a declaration is required that you've met the current CPD requirements for the 14-15 practicing year, and then for the 15-16 practicing year, a declaration is required that you've considered your learning and development needs and taken appropriate steps to ensure your competence. We've issued yesterday a position statement. The position statement articulates in a little bit more detail these two slides and our expectations of moving to the new approach. This can be found on our website, and we'll give you those details later. So in terms of the process by which you can move to the new approach, we won't expect you to tell us that you're moving or staying with the existing requirements. It's entirely up to you which one of those particular approaches you choose and when you choose it. There will be no notification process, and you can choose to adopt the new approach from any time after the 1st of April 2015. We expect that solicitors and their employers will want to sort of take on board some of the things that we're saying through this webinar, some of the things we're saying through the position statement, and some of the key messages we make in our response to the consultation. We expect there to be a discussion. We expect that people want to sit down and think about, in terms of what we're saying, how they can continue to ensure that they deliver a proper standard of service.
So following that, we'd like now to give us an indication of when you think you will be adopting the new approach to continuing competence. We've got that question there, and so there's 3 options from April 2015. I'm still undecided. I'm waiting until 1st of November 2016. So I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. We have got the results from when we looked at this a few months back about this, and it was a 50-50 split between April 2015 and November 2016. So it'll be interesting now once people have had a little bit more time to think, to see what they're saying. So we'll get the results of that now. Okay, so yes, we've got some changes there. That we've got almost 60% of you saying that you're thinking of going for that from April the 1st, 2015. And also, that was a third going from April 2015, and still quite a lot of you undecided, so that's the almost 60%, and a small proportion are waiting until November 2016.
I think it's those figures are quite interesting because obviously what came through very strongly in the consultation responses is the cultural change required across the profession to move to this new approach and to think about reflecting on performance. So those figures will tend to sort of indicate that we're really committed to ensuring that we support the profession in moving to our new approach, and we'll come on to the ways in which we plan to do that on a later slide. There are some wider changes that we're proposing on making in terms of implementing our new approach to ensuring the ongoing competence of solicitors. We are proposing to remove the requirement for newly qualified solicitors to take management course stage 1. This is part of our third red tape consultation, which is currently live. You can access that consultation document on our website. The deadline for responses is the 17th of November. We're proposing on removing it because we think it is an unnecessary regulatory burden at the moment. The engagement work we've undertaken suggested that for many individuals and for many employers, the objectives of the management course stage 1 came too early in a solicitor's career, and there was no alignment with their natural career progression. Given that we're implementing a new approach to ensuring ongoing competence, prescriptive requirements like management course stage 1 don't naturally fit with that new approach, so that is another reason why we're looking at proposing to remove it. Subject to the outcome of the consultation and subject to any approval by the Legal Services Board, we would expect that we would remove the requirement to take management course stage 1 from our regulations on the 1st of April 2015. We will no longer award hours for activity that we deliver. So unfortunately for this particular webinar, there will be no CPD hours for it or for any other conferences, seminars, etc. that we do. This is in line with our new approach. We will stop authorising external and internal providers from the 1st of November 2014. You can find further information on this on the CPD section of our website, and we'll give you the website details at the end of this particular webinar. We'll also be making a small number of minor regulatory changes to ensure we've got the right framework for us to allow individual solicitors to adopt our new approach from the 1st of April. These predominantly relate to permitting solicitors to comply with our existing regulations by alternative means.
So as Richard was saying, that we recognise that this is a whole new way of undertaking CPD after a long time of having quite a set approach to it. So we are committed to doing as much as we can to help and guide you through this process for when you decide to take on the changes that we're setting out. Things that we're doing that you can access to help you with your plans and deciding what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Taking further research, we've got a research report which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute about work that's been undertaken in entities that will give a bit of an idea of the good practice that's already going on there. We're currently developing a toolkit, and that will be published next year, and that will give you some ideas and information about different types of things that might suit you and your firm. So it's about developing that approach that works best for you. We've got a video now which has further information about what we're doing, why we're doing it. Developed Q&As that can help you go through your processes and help you to see what else you might need to know. There's quite a lot of resources on the website at the moment around CPD and our changes, but there'll be more coming. So keep on looking on the Training for Tomorrow website, microsite, to get access to those. discuss the competence statement, so you'll be able to get a sense of that next week, what that looks like and how that can be used. So that will be out soon, and you'll be able to start giving your views and your questions about that. And we'll work on that then to make sure that it is something that will be helpful to you. An ongoing programme of stakeholder engagement, so there'll be formal activities like this, but as Richard said earlier, that if there's any questions that you've got or something you'd like us to discuss with us, to get in touch, and we will do that, talk to your firms about that. And as part of that, we'll have regular ongoing communications as things arise, so when there's questions that are becoming more frequently asked, we'll be able to publish responses to that. I mentioned there that we're using research as a way to help identify where there's good and existing good practice that has been happening within firms, entities, and also in-house activities. We did commission some research earlier in the year to examine education and training systems within entities, and so 750 firms took part in a telephone survey, and then we also had about 20 depth interviews there to get a little bit more of a sense about the actual activities that were going from day to day, how things were planned. What was encouraging was to see that the majority of firms already have formal training processes in place, looking at staff development through performance appraisal, and that's through systems that have been developed by firms themselves, some using competence frameworks, some using their own systems like 6-month appraisals, tying it in with promotion and also review processes. So there's a whole range out there already. We also saw that a lot of firms are already keeping records of the time and nature of the training activities that were undertaken. So there's less reflection on that, those activities. So that's something perhaps we'd hope we'd see more of with this new approach, that people are looking a bit more at what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how it's helping them, or what else they need to do. So that was one finding, that we saw that there's perhaps been that compliance nature, but now we hope what the efforts that have been put into compliance will go into reflection. The most encouraging thing of all is that ongoing professional development is an ingrained thing within the profession across all regulated entities. And what we also found was that less formal training that was being undertaken, such as work shadowing, mentoring, case file discussions, these were happening and were being found to be very effective. So that, again, reflects on giving you more flexible options to develop yourself. Okay. If we look at the toolkit, which we're currently working on at the moment, that will be issued in spring 2015 and be supported by a wide range of materials on the website. So far, from what we've developed, it will look at ways to reflect on your practice and identify training needs. So, like I was saying there, that's wanting more focus on that rather than just recording hours spent. It'll look at the range of ways in which training can be addressed, so those informal ways, which actually, informal is probably too loose a word for it, but that they're quite structured and embedded into firms and showing that they're quite integral to development and ongoing professional enhancement there. And then how to carry on recording and reflecting training in a way that is useful to you, and in continuing to identify how to build on that to ensure your competence. There'll be tools in there to assist with the process, and also examples of good practice that was taken from some of our discussions with different firms and also in-house practitioners as well. If we look now then at our next question, which is, when adopting the new approach, do you think you'll need to change, what changes do you think you will need to make to your current learning and development approach? So if you look at that now, I'll give you a few seconds to look at that. Again, people have been telling us that there's a mix of different things that they're doing there and looking at what works best for them. So we'll be looking at those results now. Just get those results. Okay. So that's very encouraging to see that over 60% of you are thinking you'll need to make changes to your current learning and development approach. So we'll see how those play out in the future. Okay. If you look then, there will be a lot of further help out there to help you in making those changes. So the position statement that went out on Monday, along with the Q&A, will also be open, I say, to questions. So use our mailbox at t4t@sra.org.uk. But we'll also be issuing tweets, but you can tweet us as well because we monitor those regularly and pick those up, so if you can use those approaches. And also continuing to check the microsite because that will be continually updated.
So in terms of what happens next, we would expect you to now go and have a look at the position statement if you haven't looked at it already. It's available on our website. And start to really begin that sort of process in terms of thinking about, under the kind of the architecture of our new approach, how you can ensure that you meet your regulatory requirement to deliver a proper standard of service by ensuring that you remain competent. So we think that would probably require internal discussion. That internal discussion we expect will probably want to be done with reference to the toolkit and the competence statement. So obviously, as Mary has suggested, you get a first glance at the competence statement next week. And then really it's a matter to sort of come to a conclusion as to exactly which of the two approaches up until the 1st of November 2016 best suits you, and the preference of your particular employer. You can adopt the new approach from the 1st of April 2015, and the new approach applies to all solicitors from the 1st of November 2016.
Okay, before we go to your questions, we've got one more we'd like to ask you. So following this discussion today, we'd just like to know, are you more informed about our new approach to ensuring competence? As saying, we're here to offer help, provide help as much as we can in getting you and helping you to adopt this new approach that we're now undertaking. So if we look at the results now. So that's good news for us then. That's over 80% of you are saying yes, you're feeling more informed after the session today. That's really good. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a very short break now because we need to go and have a look at the sort of questions that hopefully you've been submitting. So if we have a sort of two-minute break, we'll then start to run through some of the questions that you've asked us and hopefully provide some answers. A copy of these slides will be available, and if we don't answer your specific question, we'll take them away and we'll look at them and include them in the Q&As that we'll be issuing to support the release of the position statement and support you on moving towards this new approach.
Okay, we've had quite a lot of really good questions then. Some of those we'll need to take back and have a look at to give you specific answers, so we'll get back to you on those. But there's some that we've selected here that have been asked a number of times that we think will be helpful to answer to now. So we've had a few questions about what is appropriate training, what should I be doing, what sort of prescriptive things will we be offering. Well, I think the thing is with saying that the competence statement, when you see it, that should help you to look at yourself, your practice, reflect on that, and then think, right, what do I need to make sure I am able to do that? And as we say, there's a threshold statement there as well that will give that little bit more guidance, and there'll be some information around that about different levels beyond that threshold statement to show where more experienced practitioners might need to be. So it is about looking at the competence statement and looking at what you need to do to address that, and that's where the appropriateness comes to get you to that level of competence to perform at the required level.
And I think just picking up on that, the points that Mary's made there is that under our new approach, we won't prescribe learning activity. The whole thrust of our new approach is that there's freedom and flexibility for you to think about what you need to do to meet, to deliver a proper standard of service, and think through what types of learning activity may be appropriate for you to address that needs. No two people with the same, no two people have sort of similar learning styles. There is a whole host of, I suppose, more formal training and also informal training, which may well be appropriate to meet particular needs. Our toolkit will, I suppose, provide a menu. It's not an exhaustive list, and it's not a prescriptive list, but it's a menu of the types of things that you may want to consider in addressing your training needs. There have been a couple of questions really around, I said they're concerns more than questions, around the impact, I suppose, on people undertaking learning development and the impact on the profession. So I think it would be worth spending sort of 5 minutes just to address those. So there's been questions around the fact that people might well do a reduction or maybe no CPD at all. And I think we accept that as a byproduct of this new approach. But I think we do need to point out that law does change, and solicitors have an obligation to remain up to date with the law. The roles that solicitors do also change, and solicitors under our new approach will need to regularly reflect on whether they have the skills and knowledge and expertise required to perform those roles effectively. Solicitors are no different from other professionals who regularly reflect on their performance. So, if people adopt our new approach, we don't see there being too much of an issue with that. A couple of questions that have sort of come in around the possibility of firms neglecting training or preventing solicitors from undertaking training. Our new approach, and hopefully this webinar has made it very clear, is pinned to the current regulatory responsibility that individual solicitors must continue to deliver a proper standard of service. We're asking you to reflect. So if you do reflect and you do identify a training need, then I think an employer will need to think very hard as to why they're turning down that particular request. In our kind of engagement, we spoke to lots and lots of firms and lots of individual solicitors, and certainly the general feeling we get is that employers take the competency and effectiveness of their staff incredibly seriously. They understand the advantages of doing so. Additionally, there are lots of ways in which training needs can be addressed. They don't all require attendance at sit-down training that costs X hundred of pounds per head and requires 3 days out of the office. And there are other ways in which you can address learning needs, and again, these will be highlighted in our toolkits. What it will come down to essentially is a discussion between the individual solicitor and their employer. We, as the SRA, don't expect to get involved where there are cases of a legitimate disagreement. But again, as with other professions, this type of discussion happens all of the time. We mentioned at the very beginning around consumer confidence, and again, a couple of sort of questions, queries around whether this new approach actually helps improve consumer confidence in solicitors and the profession. We don't think it will undermine confidence. The new approach really just focused on compliance. You go away, you do your 16 hours, and in some cases people will think very long and hard about what that 16 hours means and how it relates to the jobs of others. It will just be let's accrue the 16 hours. So the position we're starting from, it doesn't inspire large amounts of confidence. Our new approach really, we think, is more robust and tougher. You will need to sit down and think about how you can continue, by reference to the competence statement, to deliver a proper standard of service. There have been a couple of questions around, I suppose, monitoring more in its broadest sense. We have to be pragmatic. We're not going to identify and chase every single incident of where a solicitor hasn't delivered a proper standard of service. That would be quite a different regulatory framework and organisation that we have now. We are clear, though, through the development of the competence statement, that we have a much better articulation of what a proper standard of service looks like. So as an organisation, we can look for issues where there are competence risks. Where we identify a competence risk and we decide that regulatory intervention is required, we would expect you to be able to demonstrate that you've undertaken, either you've thought about your performance, the quality of your performance, that you've identified any training needs, and that you've addressed that training need. In cases where you've done that, we're likely to take a slightly different approach to any regulatory action we may well take, as opposed to particular solicitors or firms who simply haven't undertaken any of that process. So in terms of monitoring, we'll be using our supervision function, our risk function, to look at the information the organisation receives and really explore that and explore whether or not individuals have taken the necessary required training. And again, the annual declaration will be part of that. You will be required to make an annual declaration. A couple of questions referring to the regulatory changes that we're making. They relate to the removal of defined terms that relate to accredited training. We'll be looking at making a couple of regulations that permit individual solicitors to adopt in and still comply with our existing regulations during the transitional period. And one particular area this relates to is those solicitors with high rights of audience, because obviously we have regulations that state that you must do 5 hours of advocacy for CPD. We'll be making a regulatory change that if you do adopt the new approach, you're not required to undertake those 5 hours, because again, that's prescription and removing prescription from the new approach.
Okay. Following on from those questions, others where there's been a few people asking is what will the exact wording be on the annual declaration? There will be further information on this in spring 2015, so you'll know what that will be and who needs to sign that off. We've also got a question around the requirement to undertake MCS1, when will that cease? So that's looking at the consultation, that decision will be made subject to the outcome from that, and approval by the Legal Services Board. We're looking for the removal of that requirement will be effective from April 2015. And also looking about more information about these changes and how to ensure that people are kept up to date quickly when we are issuing new information and new documentation. So we'll be sending out regular email communication that covers the work we're doing, and we do have a way for you to sign up that will get you onto the regular Training for Tomorrow email list. If you're not on that, let us know and we'll get you signed up for that. Also, we mentioned Twitter, that we'll be releasing updates there as well. And also a question around the toolkit and will it apply to in-house lawyers, and it intends that will be applicable to all solicitors, and we're doing quite a lot of development work with in-house lawyers to ensure that it's relevant across all different types of practice for solicitors.
Okay, just a couple of final questions. There's been a number of questions around if you decide to opt in from the 1st of April, how many hours do you need to do in terms of CPD before you opt in? We're not expecting you to prorata those hours. What we would expect is that you still continue to carry out and undertake the learning and development you think is required in order for you to deliver a proper standard of service. And the final point is that we've had quite a few comments really around where can you view this webinar again? Will you get a copy of the slides? The webinar will be available as a resource online, so you can come back to it. It'll be on our website with all our other completed webinars, as will these slides. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you are clearer now on our new approach to ensuring continuing competence. There's lots of ways in which you can engage with us in terms of if you've got further questions, so please use them, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.